I started my career in healthcare technology. I was with a company right out of grad school. Ended up being there for almost a decade. It's called Greenway, and we built electronic health records for physician practices. And that kind of through the course of that step in my career, I got an opportunity to learn a ton just about high growth businesses. When I joined, I was employee 55. One of our board members, who's a mentor of mine, he said, "What in your job is giving you life, and what is pulling you back? What is dragging you down?"
Okay,
Right?
okay.
And it's such a great question because sometimes you can get so in the muck and you're just focused that you kind of miss out on like what you really need to be doing. And his question was just another way of saying like, are you really playing to your strengths day in and day out? I grew up in a family of leaders. My stepdad was a leader at an organization. My dad was an entrepreneur in the healthcare world. He started a couple different things, and so I always kind of looked at, all right, these are things that I've learned leadership. I know enough about healthcare to be dangerous. Maybe that's an area I should go, and so that was kind of what I started my path down, was jumping into a healthcare technology company. So we have two offices, and then we have remote staff as well. So in our headquarters, we've got about 25 people, and we do hybrid in the office.
Mm,
People are
mm.
typically in the office 2 to 3 days a week, and then some
Right.
flexibility on working from home. And then we have an office
Mm.
in Atlanta when there's about 12 people there, and they're periodically in the office. That's a shared workspace, and so
When you were in your first company, Greenway, right? That was a health tech company. And then
mhm,
when you left that company, you have also switched your industry as well. You came into fintech and you came into HR tech, which is
right.
which is not common, right? When you have spent 8 years in one industry and you are going to start your own business, you do try as a human being, as a normal human being. I know you are not a normal human being. Right? Hello, everyone. My name is Ali. I'm the CEO of Al-Burraq Technologies. Today, we have another tech star who has jumped many ships. So, we are going to talk to Matt Pierce. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you so much for joining. And we would love to hear about your background, from where you started and the journey you had, the amazing journey you had. So, please tell us about that.
Sure. So, my role today, I'm the founder and CEO at a company called Immediate, which is a fintech and HR tech company. But the road to get here took a lot of twists and turns.
Hmm.
It's funny,
I'm sure.
my
I'm
early
sure about
career,
that.
right? It's there. There's always, I think there's a great image somewhere out on the computer or out on the internet um, of this, how you always think things are going to be up and to the right, and how they take these twists and
Hmm.
turns, but you end up, if you're growing, you end up and to the right,
Hmm.
just not in the same path you always thought you'd get there. And that's what happened for me.
Right.
I started my career in healthcare technology. I was with a company right out of grad school. Ended up being there for almost a decade. It was called Greenway, and we built electronic health records for physician practices. And that kind of through the course of that step in my career, I got an opportunity to learn a ton just about high growth businesses. When I joined, I was employee 55, and we built it up to about 850 employees before we were acquired, and then merged with two of our competitors. So, you kind of blink over the course of 8 to 10 years. And I went from employee 55 to one of about 1,800 employees. And just all of the experience that brought along with it, I've kind of carried with me throughout the rest of my career, understanding how to
Right.
grow, how to like kind of navigate culture, how to navigate a fast growing team, a fast growing environment. There's just a lot of really neat things that we've had some parallels we've gotten to experience here at Immediate as well. So that's kind of the start. Happy to take that any deeper or further that you'd like.
Right, right, right. That sounds perfect because it is always being said that your first job plays an important role in your career. And your first job also did the same thing, right?
Absolutely. It's super foundational, right? I think it's
Hmm. Hmm.
important because a lot of times I think people coming out of either coming out of high school and just jumping straight into the working world, or coming out of college.
Hmm.
A lot of times people are kind of, you're thinking about it too late, and you end up taking just what's
Right.
out there. versus being
Hmm.
very deliberate. For
Hmm.
me, I was a finance undergrad, and I realized in my senior year of
Right.
college that I didn't want to go into finance. And so I said,
Hmm.
what can I do to buy myself a little more time and to keep learning? And so I ended up applying for a graduate program and got another year and a half. And in that year and a half, I made it my focus to figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to be doing, and kind of thinking about. I'm not like a huge proponent of like 5, 10, 20-year plans because like we just talked about, life has so many twists and turns, but
Yeah.
understanding where I
Of
wanted to
course.
get. And for
Yeah.
me, I was like, I want to start a company. Well, what's the best way for me to have a foundational level in my career to prepare for starting a company? Well, it's to go work for an early stage business so I can learn some of the really kind of the
Hmm.
nuanced
Hmm.
things of early stage companies and what you've got to do to get this off the ground. And so that's what I
Right.
did, and that's the encouragement I give to people.
Right. Right. So that means that you decided it before you started your job that you are going to build your own business, right? So it was a
Absolutely.
pre-planned thing.
Yep, sure was. And I knew that. I would say probably early in college, I kind of started just reading more about entrepreneurs and understanding more. I
Hmm.
had a class where there was a class where somebody came in and spoke, and to a big like marketing 101 class. There were 300 people in there, and we walked out. And one of my friends said, "I could see you doing that one day." And I said, "Giving a speech in front of a big class," and they said, "No, starting a company." There was an entrepreneur that was in there, and it just got my wheels going. And I said, well,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
in my mind, I was always thinking, like, what kind of business would I start? And I think that's this. A lot of
Right.
entrepreneurs have this mindset of you're always looking for ways to do something better, right?
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I I
Hmm.
think that aha moment is usually the thought. There's got to be a better way, right? And then following that thought up with how can I go build something that solves this problem? And that was
Hmm.
one of the things that I was always trying to bounce around. And I grew up in a family of leaders. My stepdad was a leader at an organization. My dad was an entrepreneur in the healthcare world. He started a couple different things, and so I always kind of looked at, all right, these are things that I've learned leadership. I know enough about healthcare to be dangerous. Maybe that's an area I should go. And so that was kind of what I started my path down, was jumping into a healthcare technology company.
Okay. So if you talk, we will talk about the business types later. That what kind of business you go in, and as per what you have said, that means that there were some, I would say, bacteria of entrepreneurship within you. Those were pushing you always, and those were planning that you have to do this, right?
Right.
But there is another thing which is very important, because your first job was very planned, and
Hmm.
you went into it deliberately. So what do you suggest to the entrepreneurs, whether they should start doing their businesses without the experience, or they should first go into the market, get the experience what they need, and then come up with the idea or come up with the business?
Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot, and I get this question a
Hmm.
good bit because for me, it worked for me to look at my 20s as an
Hmm.
extended like college, right? As more higher education. Like
Right.
I refer to it sometimes as like my career MBA, right? Like I got to
Hmm.
go
Hmm.
learn from a really high growth company and learn about like falling on my face and learn about having a lot of success and making some
Okay.
good money and enjoying that,
Hmm.
right? So for me, it was like, and my plan was, I'm going to learn and grow in my 20s, and in my 30s, I'm going to go start something. And that doesn't work for everybody, right? Like, but I feel like there's some people who will come out of college or be in their early 20s and go, I'm just going to jump in and build a business. And my suggestion to those people, not that it can't be done, because like Mark Zuckerberg is a great example. Now he's that's one person, right? But he started a business when he was in college, and he's still the CEO, and he's worth 150 billion dollars, and he's done really good, and he's
Hmm.
altered the course of the internet. I mean, he's done some really awesome things, right? So
Yeah.
not to say that it can't be done, but by and large, like if you're playing the odds, I think it makes sense to come out and go, let me go invest 2 or 3 years of my time working for someone else that I look up to, that I admire, that I want to be like, that I want to understand that business. I'll give
Hmm.
you an
Hmm.
example. When I was in my first job, the CEO to me was just a hero. I thought he was just an
Right.
incredible person, and I wanted to learn as much as I could from him. So I went to his
Right.
assistant and
Hmm.
I said, "Hey, are there ever meetings that I can just come sit in and listen?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And
Hmm.
I go, "I just want to sit in a corner and take notes." And she said, "I don't know,
Okay.
let me ask him." And he came by my desk a few days later and he goes, "Hey, I understand you want to like come sit in on some meetings." And I said, "I just want to learn. Like I feel like if there's anybody here that I can learn the most from, it's going to be you. And I would love to sit in." And so he said, "Absolutely, just let me know." And so his assistant would give me a heads up when there were meetings coming up. Like nothing like I wasn't
Hmm.
going to sit in investor meetings or anything like that, right? But it was like we'd have a prospect coming in or he'd be doing a presentation for remotely for a group of people and I would go sit in his room and I'd make sure my phone was on silent and I'd sit there and be quiet as possible and I would just take notes and I would just try to
Right.
learn. And then I would take what I learned from him and then I would try to implement it into what I was doing because I was primarily in a sales and partnerships role.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I took
Hmm.
that as a way of, in my mind, I took that as if I'm going to eventually be in his position, not necessarily at this company, but if I'm eventually going to be in his position, I want to learn as much as I can from him while I'm here. And so that's what I did. So I just
Got
think
it.
that that's a
Got
big
it.
piece of
Got
the
it.
puzzle of like, if you know where you want to go try to learn as much about that thing in particular as you possibly can.
And one important thing in that was that you did ask to him. That is very important. That whenever
Right.
you think that this is the step you need to go out and you need to ask them, right?
What's the worst he could do? I mean, worst he could do, I guess, would be fire me. I don't know why
He
anyone
would
would fire someone
refuse.
for that, right? So
He would
technically, the
refuse, right?
right, the worst you could do is say no. And I was like,
Yeah,
and even in my mind, I was like, even if he says no, he's going to know that I'm someone who is trying. And
interested.
I've never asked him this, but I think that the reason that I was there for 9 years, I got 4 promotions.
Hmm.
I think a
Hmm.
big part of that was because he saw something in me, right?
Yeah.
He saw, all right, hey, this guy's willing to go above and beyond. He's going to go that extra mile. And so I do think that that's a big piece of the puzzle is to your point is making the ask.
Okay, the other very important thing is that because when you were in your first company, Greenway, right, that was a health tech company. And then
Hmm.
when you left that company, you have also switched your industry as well. You came into fintech and you came into HR tech, which is
Right.
which is not common, right? When you have spent 8 years in one industry and you are going to start your own business, you do try as a human being, as a normal human being. I know you are not a normal human being, right? So you shifted your industry as well. There was one risk that you are quitting your job and you are starting your new business, right? That was one thing. But you said,
Hmm.
no, that is not okay for me. I'll I'll take two jumps together and I'll switch my
Right.
industry as well. What was the
Right.
motivation behind that and how did you come up with that?
It's to your point, it was scary, it was
Hmm.
daunting, and there was a lot
Yeah.
of thought that went into it, right?
Hmm.
I don't,
Hmm.
to your point, I don't consider myself normal. I have a extremely high tolerance for risk. Um,
Right.
my
Right.
wife does not have an extremely high tolerance for risk, and so there's this balance.
That's so
And
interesting.
so right, so those were some tough conversations,
Hmm.
or in the early days. But here's kind of how it played out was, I was initially starting to build a scheduling and payments platform from what I knew in the healthcare space, right? Um, the really short version is my grandmother, who was just this incredible woman, had had a stroke, and she was had gotten out of the hospital, but it just wasn't 100%, and she needed some help around the house, and none of us lived in the same town. We were like 2 hours away, and so we hired some in-home caregivers, and in the first 3 months we had to fire like three of them because they'd show up late or like it was just poor customer service, quite frankly.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
talked about it
Hmm.
earlier, having that there must be a better way idea. I got a phone call one morning, and it was my grandmom, and she said, "Can you come over and help me get dressed? My caregiver never showed up." Well, I was 2 hours away, right? And I was like, I said, "Yeah, I can be there." And I said, "I'm so sorry, but I can be there in 2 hours." And she said, 2 hours.
Hmm.
And I said, "Yeah, I could drive fast. Maybe I'll get there in an hour and 50 minutes." And she says, "Is this the next
Yeah.
door neighbor, Matt?" So she had called the wrong Matt, right? And so then she hung up on me, and then I called the next door neighbor Matt, and fortunately he was home, and he went over and he took care of her. But that was that like aha moment, right? That there's got to be a
Mm.
better way. And I said I'm going to set out to build a scheduling platform similar to like an Uber or Lyft where you can see where your
Yeah.
driver is when they're pulling up to pick you up. I wanted to do that for caregivers. And so I
Right.
started building that. And then I bundled in a payments engine because what I found
Right.
out just in discovery, the more in-home caregivers and organizations that provide those services, the more I talked to, I found out that the reason that people were not showing up, it was an outcome of a broader issue, and the broader issue was this huge turnover in that space. And so I started asking questions, well,
Mm.
why do you have such bad turnover? And they said, well, because people find other jobs that pay $1 more an hour, or they're tired of driving across town to take care of the elderly population. And so I said, well, what are ways we could fix that? And they said it comes down to money. And I was like, so you just pay people more. And so we pay them more, we got to charge more. And